Lucas looked down at me across the conference table and said, "Your concerns are overblown and costly. We need people who prioritize efficiency." For the past 14 years, I've been the plant operations manager at Ironwood Forge. My name is Frank Delaney, and I am 57 years old. I worked my way up from the factory floor in Akron, Ohio for 21 years prior to that. I was familiar with every machine, safety procedure, and shortcut that could cause a guy to lose his fingers or worse. For precisely 7 months, Lucas Wynn had served as CEO, brought in by the board in order to optimize shareholder value and streamline operations. The type of man who walked over oil puddles that ought to have been cleaned up weeks ago while wearing Italian shoes to a metal fabrication company and discussing growth metrics and pain issues. His decision to forego our quarterly safety training was the first warning sign. There was a full day of production loss, he said. Schedules for maintenance thereafter became flexible. Replacements of parts were postponed. To lessen visual clutter, warning signs were removed from hazardous locations. I first voiced my worries in private. Showed him the data, the stories of near misses, and the industry norms that we were now disregarding. He grinned, nodded, and took no action. I therefore kept a record of everything. Every infraction, disregard for advice, and rejection of maintenance requests. I had sent the executive team an email that morning highlighting the urgent need for repair on a vital hydraulic press. The safety barrier was damaged and the pressure gauges were malfunctioning. It was like playing Russian roulette when you used it. I suggested turning it off right away. The entire leadership team was present when I was summoned into the conference room 2 hours later. Lucas gave his verdict at that point. "Frank, we appreciate your years of service, but your priorities no longer align with our vision for Ironwood Forge." Eyes fell around the table. No one raised their voice. I had been working with these folks for years. I knew the names of their families. They now studied their notepads as if they held the universe's secrets. "You'll receive 2 months severance," Lucas added. "Human resources will handle the exit process." I simply nodded once and got to my feet without arguing or raising my voice. I briefly glanced at Vanessa from finance as I made my way to the door. Something was there, a mixture of respect and dread. She was aware that something was off. They all did. However, I also had knowledge that Lucas did not. Not all of my paperwork had ended up in company emails that could be removed. I had copies, complete, thorough, and prepared for submission to those who would genuinely be interested. Ironwood Forge was known as Midwestern Metalworks when I first arrived there. 6 months after turning 19, I started operating a stamping machine on third shift. It was hot, risky labor, but for a young person with only a high school degree, the pay was greater than anything else in Akron. Before retiring, my father had been employed at Goodyear for 42 years. "Make yourself necessary," he said to me on my first day. "Study everything. Be the one they can't get rid of." So I did. Learned about each machine. Attended industrial engineering night classes. Since no one else wanted to serve on the safety committee, I volunteered. By my 15th year, I was floor supervisor. By my 21st, operations manager for the whole plant. 350 people reported up to me. I knew their strengths, their weaknesses, which ones needed a firm hand, and which ones worked better with encouragement. My wife Elaine used to tease me. "You care more about those machines than our own kitchen appliances." Maybe she was right. Our dishwasher had been making a grinding noise for 6 months. But at work, I knew that a grinding noise could mean someone losing a hand by the end of the shift. When Old Man Winters ran the company, safety was priority one. "Production targets don't matter if someone doesn't go home to their family," he'd say. The safety record was posted at the entrance every month, and bonuses were tied to keeping accident rates low. After he retired, Ironwood drifted through 3 different ownership groups in 10 years. Each one a little less connected to the work we actually did. Each one a little more focused on quarterly numbers. Lucas was just the latest and worst in that progression. The first time we met, he asked how quickly we could double production. I told him we'd need to hire more people and maybe add another shift. He frowned like I'd insulted him. "What about just running the machines harder?" he asked. Warning bells went off in my head right there. But I tried. God knows I tried to make him understand how things worked on the floor. For months, I watched the small changes pile up. Maintenance intervals stretched. Safety equipment became optional. Experienced workers who raised concerns were the first to be let go when Lucas started his efficiency layoffs. I still remember Tommy Wilson, 26 years with the company, finding me in the parking lot the day after he was cut. "You're the only one left who remembers how things should be, Frank," he said. "Don't let them turn that place into a death trap." I promised him I wouldn't. Now I was walking to my office to clean out my desk, that promise still echoing in my ears. Human Resources gave me 30 minutes to collect my things. Cheryl from HR stood awkwardly by the door while I emptied my desk. We'd worked together for 12 years now. She couldn't meet my eyes. "I need your keys and badge," she said finally. "And you'll need to sign these." She slid termination papers across the desk. I signed without reading them. What was the point? My career at Ironwood was over either way. As I was packing the last of my personal items, a coffee mug my daughter made in high school ceramics class, a few family photos, Terry Baker from maintenance appeared in the doorway. Cheryl stepped outside to give us a minute. "This is wrong, Frank," Terry whispered. "Everyone knows it." I just nodded, keeping my voice low. "How's that hydraulic press running?" "They've got Jason operating it now." "Kid's been here 8 months, Frank. 8 months. Terry shook his head. "Lucas told us to hit the production targets no matter what." My stomach tightened. Jason was a good kid, eager to please. Too eager. "Be careful, Terry," I said, handing him my box of belongings. "Watch out for yourself." In the parking lot, I sat in my truck for a long time, staring at the building where I'd spent more than half my life. The reality of what happened was finally hitting me. My job was gone. My identity as a safety man was gone. But that wasn't what bothered me most. People were going to get hurt, maybe killed, and Lucas Wynn would write it off as an acceptable cost of doing business. I started the truck, but didn't drive home. Instead, I went to the public library, logged onto a computer, and spent 3 hours organizing all my documentation. Every email, every inspection report, every maintenance request that had been denied, photos I'd taken of blocked fire exits, disabled machine guards, and leaking chemical containers. Then I wrote a detailed cover letter explaining the systematic dismantling of safety protocols at Ironwood Forge since Lucas Wynn had taken over. When I was finished, I drove to the nearest FedEx location and sent the entire package to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration office in Columbus. On the way home, a strange calm settled over me. For months, I'd been fighting a losing battle inside the system, following the rules, respecting the chain of command, trying to protect my people while playing by Lucas's rigged game. Now I was free of those constraints. As I pulled into my driveway, my phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa in finance. "Lucas is having them run that hydraulic press around the clock. 3 shifts, no maintenance break. What should we do?" I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I went inside, kissed Elaine hello, and poured myself a rare glass of bourbon. "You're home early," she said, studying my face. "I got fired." Her eyes widened. "What? Why?" "For doing my job," I said, taking a slow sip. "But I'm not finished yet." I picked up my phone and texted Vanessa back, "Document everything. I've got a plan." 3 days later, I got a call from Patricia Simmons at OSHA. "Mr. Delaney, we've reviewed your submission regarding Ironwood Forge," she said. "I'd like to discuss some of these allegations in person." We met at a coffee shop 20 minutes from Akron. Patricia was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, but her questions were precise and knowledgeable. She'd clearly done her homework. "We take these reports seriously," she said after 2 hours of detailed discussion, "especially when they come from someone with your experience. But you should know that Ironwood has a spotless official record." "Of course they do," I said. Lucas has been falsifying the internal accident reports, paying off minor injuries out of petty cash, threatening people's jobs if they complain. Patricia nodded, making notes. We'll need to conduct an inspection. It may take a few weeks to get approval and arrange the visit. People might not have a few weeks, I said, thinking of that hydraulic press running 24 hours a day. I understand your concern, but we have procedures. Procedures won't help Jason Parker if that press fails, I interrupted. Or anyone else on that floor. She gave me a sympathetic look. I'll expedite things as much as I can. In the meantime, is there anyone still at Ironwood who might speak with us? I thought about it. Maybe, but they'd be risking their jobs. After Patricia left, I sat there feeling the weight of time pressing down. Bureaucracy moves slowly. Industrial accidents happened in an instant. That evening, I called Terry Baker. How's it looking in there? I asked when he answered. Bad, Frank. Really bad. His voice was low, like he was afraid of being overheard. That press is making noises I've never heard before. Lucas has got 3 temps running it who barely know which button turns it on. I tried to show them proper procedures and he pulled me aside. Said if I didn't get with the program, I'd be next. OSHA's going to inspect, I told him. But it might take weeks. The silence on the line told me everything. Someone's going to get hurt before then, Terry finally said. I know. I'm trying to speed things up. The next morning, I drove to the office of the Akron Gazette and asked to speak with their investigative reporter. After a brief wait, I was introduced to Olivia Jimenez, a sharp-eyed woman with a recorder and a skeptical expression. So, you're claiming unsafe conditions at Ironwood Forge? She asked after I'd given her the outline of my story. I'm not claiming anything, I said. I've got documentation. I showed her some of the photos I'd kept copies of, disabled emergency stops, blocked fire exits, missing machine guards. This could be any factory anywhere, she said. How do I know it's Ironwood? Because I worked there for 35 years until they fired me for complaining about these exact issues. Her eyes narrowed. So this is about revenge. This is about preventing funerals, I countered. Run the story or don't. But if someone dies in that plant while you're deciding, how will you feel? Olivia studied me for a long moment. I need more than just your word. Are there current employees who would verify these conditions? Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was Vanessa. Frank, she said, her voice shaking. There's been an accident. The hydraulic press. Jason's hurt bad. Ambulance just left. My stomach dropped. How bad? They're saying he might lose his arm. I looked at Olivia. You just got your verification. 2 hours later, Lucas Wynn held a press conference outside Ironwood Forge. He stood with perfect posture in his perfect suit, expressing deep concern for Jason's unfortunate accident. Safety is our #1 priority, he told the cameras with practiced sincerity. This was an isolated incident caused by operator error. We're conducting a full internal investigation. Then he played his trump card. Unfortunately, we believe this accident may have been related to deliberate sabotage by a recently terminated employee who had expressed dissatisfaction with company policies. He never said my name. He didn't have to. By that evening, 2 police officers were at my door with questions about my whereabouts that morning, and my phone was ringing with calls from former colleagues asking if I'd really done what Lucas was implying. The next morning, I hired an attorney. Harold Greenberg had represented union workers for 40 years and knew every trick companies played to dodge responsibility. They're trying to make you the scapegoat, Harold said bluntly. It's actually a good strategy on their part. Blame the disgruntled ex-employee. Drag your name through the mud. Tie everything up in investigations until the heat dies down. But I wasn't even in the building, I protested. They have security cameras. Harold nodded. Which they control. Look, Frank, this isn't about truth. It's about liability. If they can pin this on you, their insurance rates don't go up. They don't face regulatory penalties. And the inevitable lawsuit from Jason focuses on you instead of Ironwood.
So what do we do?
We fight back with facts. You said you've documented everything? Everything, I confirmed. Going back months. Good. But we need more. We need to know what they're saying internally about the accident. That evening, Terry Baker and Vanessa Morris met me in Harold's office. Both looked nervous, constantly checking their phones. Lucas called an all-hands meeting after you left, Terry explained. Said anyone talking to you or the press would be terminated immediately. Made everyone sign new NDAs.
But you're here, I said.
Terry's weathered face hardened. I've been there 30 years, Frank. What happened to Jason? That's not what we stand for. Or used to, anyway. Vanessa nodded. I processed a maintenance request for accounting. I've got copies of everything Lucas denied over the past 6 months, including 3 separate work orders for that hydraulic press.
She handed over a USB drive.
He's been systematically cutting corners everywhere, not just safety, quality control, environmental compliance, even proper tax withholding. Anything to make the quarterly numbers look better. Harold reviewed the files while we talked. When he looked up, his expression was grim. This goes beyond negligence, he said. This is willful endangerment. But it still doesn't prove Frank wasn't involved in the accident. Maybe this will help, Terry said, pulling out his phone. I recorded the safety training, or lack thereof, that Lucas gave the temps before putting them on the press. The recording was short. Lucas essentially showed them the power button and the emergency stop, then told them production targets for the shift.
That's about 2% of the proper training, I said. Did Jason get even this much?
Less, Terry said grimly. Lucas told him to figure it out and walked away. Harold was furious. This is completely illegal. Those workers should have had OSHA-mandated training, proper supervision, everything. That's not all, Vanessa said quietly. I found something in the company emails yesterday. Lucas knew that press was dangerous. The manufacturer's rep inspected it last month and officially recommended taking it offline until repairs could be made. She pulled up an email on her phone. Lucas's response to the recommendation was brief. Too expensive. Find workarounds. The room fell silent as the full picture emerged. This wasn't just cost-cutting or ignorance. Lucas had knowingly put workers on dangerous equipment after being explicitly warned of the risks. He buried the inspection report. Vanessa continued. It never even made it to the maintenance department. I thought about Jason, 23 years old, lying in a hospital bed, possibly facing life without his arm, all because Lucas wanted to hit his quarterly targets. So what's our next move? I asked Harold. He gathered the evidence we'd collected. First, we clear your name. Then we make sure Ironwood and Lucas personally face the consequences. Terry's phone buzzed. He looked at it, and his face went pale. What is it? I asked. OSHA just showed up at the plant, he said. Surprise inspection. Lucas is losing his mind. For the first time since I've been fired, I smiled. Perfect timing. The OSHA inspection of Ironwood Forge lasted 3 days. Patricia Simmons led a team of 6 inspectors who documented over 78 serious violations. Meanwhile, Harold had arranged a meeting with detectives investigating the sabotage allegations against me. With Terry's testimony and security footage showing I hadn't been on the premises, the police quickly determined Lucas's claims were baseless. I was formally cleared, which Harold immediately leaked to the Akron Gazette. Olivia Jimenez's front-page story ran the following Sunday. Whistleblower vindicated. Former manager warned of dangers before a horrific industrial accident. The article detailed my warnings, Lucas's cover-up, and the injured worker's condition. Jason had survived, but losses are below the elbow. The story sparked outrage in community, especially among families with connections to Ironwood. The company had been part of Akron for generations. Now it was being portrayed, accurately, as a death trap run by a profit-obsessed outsider. Lucas attempted damage control with another press conference, but this time, reporters came armed with specific questions about the ignored manufacturer's warnings and falsified safety records. These allegations are completely unfounded, Lucas insisted, his composure cracking. Frank Delaney has a personal vendetta against his company. What Lucas didn't know was that Harold had arranged for Jason Parker to watch the press conference from his hospital room, and that Jason had agreed to an exclusive interview immediately after. Seeing Lucas dismiss the accident that had cost him his arm was the final straw for Jason. On camera, with his bandaged limb clearly visible, he detailed the lack of training, the pressure to meet impossible quotas, and how management ignored warnings about the dangerous press. Frank Delaney tried to shut that machine down. Jason told the interviewer, "If they'd listened to him, I'd still have my arm." The interview was devastating. By evening, Ironwood's board of directors called an emergency meeting. The next morning, two things happened. Lucas was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. I received a call from Gregory Winters, son of the former owner. "Frank, this is Greg Winters. I need your help." I hadn't spoken to Greg in years. After his father retired, Greg had moved to Chicago to pursue other business interests, selling his stake in the company. "The board asked me to step in temporarily," he explained. "The place is a mess. OSHA's shut down half the production lines. We got lawsuits pending and morale is completely shot. Sounds like you got your hands full." I said, unsure why he was calling me. "I need someone who knows the operation inside and out. Someone the workers trust." He paused. "I want you to come back, Frank, as acting plant manager." I hadn't expected this. "You know I'm the one who sent the evidence to OSHA, right?" "Of course. That's exactly why I want you. You put people's safety above everything else, just like my father taught us." I thought about it. Going back would be strange. There would be those who resented me for the disruption, the lost production, maybe even lost bonuses. But there would also be a chance to rebuild what had been broken. "I'll do it on two conditions," I said finally. "First, every single safety issue gets fixed before we restart production. No exceptions." "Agreed," Greg said immediately. "And the second, Jason Parker gets full compensation, best medical care, full salary during recovery, and a guaranteed job when he's ready to return, if he wants it." There was a moment of silence, then, "Done. When can you start?" 3 days later, I walked back to the front doors of Ironwood Forge. The production floor was silent, machines dormant during the safety overhaul. Terry Baker met me with a clipboard of repair orders and a grin. "Never thought I'd see you back here," he said as we walked the floor. "Makes two of us." We stopped at the hydraulic press that had injured Jason. It was cordoned off with yellow tape, waiting for factory representatives to either repair or replace it. "It's going to take time to fix everything Lucas broke," Terry said. I nodded, looking around at the quiet machines and the workers reinstalling guards and safety equipment. "Then we better get started." 6 weeks later, Gregory Winters called a company-wide meeting in the main production area. All 300 employees gathered around a temporary stage, an unusual mix of tension and hope in the air. I stood off to the side, watching Greg approach the microphone. Behind him sat the recently reconstituted board of directors, now including 2 retired floor workers and a safety compliance officer. "Many of you have been with Ironwood longer than I have," Greg began. "You remember when this company stood for something more than just quarterly profits. Today, we begin to restore that legacy." He announced a complete restructuring of the company, new safety protocols, increased maintenance budgets, a bonus system tied to both production goals and safety metrics, and a worker representation committee with actual authority. Then Greg paused, his expression hardening. "As for the recent leadership that betrayed your trust, I have an update. This morning, the board voted unanimously to terminate Lucas Wynn for cause. Additionally, based on evidence of willful negligence, we are cooperating fully with the district attorney's office as they pursue criminal charges." A murmur ran through the crowd. "One final announcement," Greg said. "From now on, Ironwood Forge will have a new position. Director of Operational Safety and Compliance. This person will have final authority over any decision affecting worker safety, with direct report to the board. Greg gestured toward me. Frank Delaney has agreed to accept this position, effective immediately. The silence broke into applause. Not polite corporate applause, but the genuine appreciation of working people who understood what had been at stake. As I stepped forward, I caught sight of Jason Parker at the back of the room. His left sleeve was pinned up, but he was smiling. He gave me a nod, one that carried both forgiveness and gratitude. I nodded back, then turned to address my colleagues. 3 months after returning to Ironwood, I drove to the county courthouse for Lucas W.'s arraignment. He faced multiple charges, including criminal negligence resulting in serious bodily injury. I didn't need to be there. The case would proceed with or without my presence. But something in me needed to see it through to the end. Lucas looked smaller somehow in his expensive suit, standing before the judge. When he turned and saw me in the gallery, his face flushed with anger. I just watched him passively as he pleaded not guilty and was released on bail. Outside the courthouse, Lucas approached me in the parking lot. "Happy now, Frank?" he demanded. "You've destroyed my career over one accident." "It wasn't just one accident," I replied calmly. "It was a disaster waiting to happen. You knew the risks and chose profit anyway." "That's business," he said dismissively. "No, that's criminal." I turned to leave. "I'll beat these charges," he called after me, "and then I'll sue you for everything you've got." I didn't bother responding. Some men never learn. The following weekend, I visited Jason at his apartment. He was adapting to his prosthetic arm, determined to return to work after completing physical therapy. We sat on his balcony drinking iced tea. "I've been meaning to ask you something," Jason said. "You could have just walked away, found another job. Why'd you fight so hard?" I thought about it. Because some things matter more than a paycheck. When you see something wrong, really wrong, you got 2 choices: look the other way or do something about it. Jason nodded. "Well, I'm glad you did something." As I drove home that evening, I felt a peace I hadn't known in a long time. Ironwood was running safely again. Production numbers were actually up due to better maintenance and morale, and I was doing work that mattered. Sometimes standing your ground means walking away first, but that doesn't mean you're finished.
I was in distress because I was losing weight, but I was unsure of what to do or who to talk to.
She came to my rescue at that point. Her soft voice encouraged me to talk about my issues.
Then waiting for me was a story of incredible resurgence.
You can call me Jake Weston. I have no idea how my parents appear. I was at a children's care facility by the time I could recall, having spent my early years in an orphanage. My mother reportedly left me and vanished, and I have no idea who or where my father is. She has repeatedly failed to pay me a visit, so I have no idea what she looks like, but that's fine with me. Even though I didn't have a lot of money, I knew that the staff looked after me well. I never felt alone at the institution because there were so many children there. One child in particular became quite close to me. Madison was her name. She was a year younger than me, and she was a cute girl. Madison arrived to the assisted living facility when she was 8 years old and I was 9. When we initially met, she was slender and unenthusiastic. Madison initially resisted eating. "I want to go home to Mom and Dad," she said repeatedly while sobbing uncontrollably. Thus it appeared like the staff was losing control of her. "You'll meet your mom someday," would be the consoling words of Sally and Tim, 2 other children the same age, "and they'll come get you if you're a good girl." It turns out that some children do leave the facility after being picked up by their parents, but not all of them do. Madison was on her knees when I walked over to her. "Do you want to see your mom and dad?" "I want to see them." I felt compelled to shield her when I saw her crying. Because I had Madison and Madison had me, I informed Madison that it's not lonely even without a mother. We grew older together after that, supporting one another like true siblings. However, we were only allowed to remain at the facility until we were 18. I started living alone after high school and found a job at a small food production firm. Madison began living in a dorm after turning 18 and took out student loans to go to nursing school. Even after she turned 18, her parents failed to come get her. Even though the company I was able to work for after high school paid little, I was thankful that they hired me as a recent high school graduate. In actuality, during my high school job search, I only had interviews with 2 businesses. Only because the school went out of their way to vouch for me was that possible. I'm not particular. I have to live alone, therefore if I could get a job, I would do anything. I had that thought. So I put up with it, even though I had to work overtime without getting paid, had my chair kicked violently, and was shouted at without cause. The president of the company I joined was a beautiful woman in her 40s named Arya. But she was only nice on the outside and was harsh to the employees. By the way, their chairman was Arya's father, and he seemed to have the same personality. In particular, he seemed to use me as a stress relief and made fun of me. You should be grateful just for being hired as a high school graduate. I can fire you any time, you know. But then I guess you won't be able to pay your rent. Ha! It must be hard being poor and parentless. Although it was frustrating, I couldn't say anything back. It's true that I might not find another company that would hire a high school graduate. And above all, I didn't want to worry Madison, who I often contacted. I told Madison it was a good company. I didn't want to say things like, I quit or I can't find another job. I've always been like a big brother to Madison. I didn't want my little sister to see me in such a pitiful state. But now I wonder, why didn't I quit my job sooner? I did once reach my breaking point when I developed stress-induced gastroenteritis and talked to my boss about leaving the company. But immediately, Arya came to see me. So you want to quit, huh? She asked. I told her, albeit nervously, that I wanted to quit and get my health back on track. But Arya just laughed off my concerns. Don't be a baby. If you quit here, are you just going to run away whenever something goes wrong at your next job? I don't intend to. I was weak, and the words were not coming out of my mouth properly as I was being stuffed by the beautiful company. I'm not letting you off the hook. The real world isn't so forgiving. No company will hire you if you quit your first job right after getting hired out of high school. I was a high school graduate, and this company was my first job. I didn't have many friends. I didn't realize that the environment I was in was toxic and abnormal. The daily verbal abuse from my boss was physically and mentally exhausting, and I was constantly sleep-deprived. I wasn't getting any information about other companies, so I assumed that other companies must be like this one. You might say I was naive, but looking back, it almost feels like I was brainwashed. In such a daily life, one day I was summoned by Arya. Inside, I was wondering what she was going to say to me, hoping she wouldn't throw something at me. In her office, Arya was waiting with a smirk on her face. You're single. No girlfriend, right? Well, who'd want to be with a useless bum like you anyway? So, I'll marry you. I was so taken aback I froze for a few seconds. I don't quite understand. This was the story from Arya. Apparently, Siren is currently having an affair with another company's CEO. It's been going on for years, not just a fling. The other person is married and has kids. I was disgusted with the CEO, Arya, who knew that much and had a relationship with him. Recently, both Arya's father and her lover's parents started to suspect the affair. In order to hide it, the CEO, Arya, had come up with the idea of marrying me. I don't have any desire to have kids or raise a family. I just want to spend all my money on myself. I still want to be with my lover since we share common interests. Only then did I realize the ludicrous situation I had been dragged into. But why do you want to marry me? Would anyone really consider marrying someone they've been harassed by, even if it was just a sham? I've already told you I don't care who it is. You have no money, no parents. You're perfect to keep a secret with. I felt dizzy. It's true. I have no money, no parents, no higher education. But being forced into a sham marriage, I felt like crying at my own pathetic state.
And then, forgetting that I was in front of CEO Arya, I blurted out I should have a choice too.
Hearing this, CEO Arya turned beet red and threw a stack of documents from her desk at me. Well then, how about getting fired? Understand you might not find another job. You dare disrespect me? I won't let this slide. I'll give you some time, but you better say yes. If you refuse, you're fired. And I'm not talking about 3 months from now. It'll be effective immediately. From that day on, I felt like I was barely alive. Getting fired was a problem, but marrying CEO Arya would be hell. I knew that much. Unable to give an answer, I continued going to work. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep due to anxiety. I didn't realize that my decision-making ability was getting worse. A few days after CEO Arya proposed to me, Madison came to my house. It was an unexpected visit. We hadn't planned anything.
Seeing my face at the door, Madison was taken aback.
Jake, you've got dark circles under your eyes and you've lost weight. You're not eating enough, are you? You look really pale. Madison's words made me realize that I might have lost some weight. I hadn't taken a good look in the mirror or stepped on the scale, so I hadn't noticed. Standing aimlessly at my front door, Madison forcefully nudged me from behind and sat me down on the living room couch. I came over because I was worried. You didn't reply to my texts or calls. I thought you were busy with work, maybe doing overtime, but here you are at home. You could have responded. Don't make me worry like this. All I could muster in response to Madison's words was a weak yeah. In the meantime, Madison was briskly arranging Tupperware on the table. It seemed she had prepared some food. I made all the dishes you love, Jake, so eat a lot. I figured you might have been too busy to cook, so I also brought some rice. I'll put this in a bowl. Madison's voice was somehow comforting, and the aroma wafting from the warm dishes was incredibly appetizing. I took Madison's suggestion and started eating the rice and dishes, grilled pork casserole, fried chicken, potato salad, scrambled eggs, all my favorite foods. It had been a while since I had a leisurely meal, or even ate something that someone else had cooked. Delicious, I said, and realized that I was crying. In a panic, I looked at Madison, fearing she had seen me crying. But the tears just wouldn't stop. On the contrary, they began to flow more and more. All the hardship and suffering I had been enduring seemed to explode the moment I looked at Madison. I continued eating while sobbing. Madison simply watched me with a kind smile. If you're hungry, that's a good sign. Eat plenty. I made all this just for you, Jake. And so, under Madison's watchful gaze, I continued to eat and cry. After the meal, Madison made me a cup of cocoa. I usually drink coffee, but perhaps seeing how exhausted I was, she decided to avoid it. I took a sip of the warm cocoa and looked at Madison. When I did, our eyes met. She had been looking at me too. From her gaze, I could tell she was worried about me. I had avoided consulting her about my boss and work to prevent her from worrying. But I realized that I was causing her plenty of worry even now. But I decided to tell her everything. I didn't want to lie or hide anything from her, as she had been so supportive and concerned about me. Every day at work, I was subjected to harassment and yelling. I was loaded with unpaid overtime and had no time to rest. And just recently, I was told to get married as a cover for an affair. Upon hearing this, I could see Madison's brow furrow. She was clearly upset. Why don't you just quit that job?
Why are you so attached to the company?
Because I only have a high school diploma and I don't have family. They told me I won't find another job. I might even struggle to pay my rent. Immediately, Madison started browsing something on her phone and then showed me the screen. There were various job postings that were open to high school graduates. It's true that there are places that will hire high school graduates as full-time employees, though not as many as college graduates. And even part-time workers can earn enough to get by. It's okay to try to get a full-time job from a part-time job. What Madison was saying was pretty much common sense, but it felt as if I was hearing it for the first time. Besides, Jake, you're not one to waste money. You must have enough saved for rent for a while. Even if you quit your job, you'll be able to survive for a while. Madison told me to take my checkbook. So I did and checked my balance. Just as Madison had said, I had enough saved in my account to cover my rent for a considerable period. Since I didn't have any extravagant spending habits, I had money. Why did I convince myself that I couldn't quit my job? As I muttered this, Madison tightly grasped my hand. You've been working too hard, Jake. That company is horrible. Under normal circumstances, anyone would realize how absurd the company and its boss are. They could even be sued. Your judgment has dulled due to the constant denial and exhaustion. Her words struck me to the core. What should I do? For the first time, I admitted my weakness to Madison, asking for help. Madison smiled at me confidently. Leave it to me. I know people who can help. Why don't you go to bed, Jake? I'll call in sick for you tomorrow so you can sleep as much as you want. I wonder if it was okay to skip work like that. As I was thinking this, the shrill voice of my boss, Aurea, echoed in my ears. Useless. I could hear her yelling at me. Scary images of Aurea played in my mind one after another, and I became scared. Seeing me freeze up Madison, who seemed to have sensed something, gently took my hand. And that's when she said, It's going to be all right. When Madison held my hand and made me lie down in bed, the fear and anxiety within me gradually subsided, and my eyelids slowly closed. The next day, I woke up well past 3 p.m. I was surprised to find that I had slept for more than half a day, without waking up even once. Even after I woke up, Madison continued to take care of me in every possible way. That evening, she took me to a cafe. There, I was introduced to a middle-aged man. He was no acquaintance of mine, and he was too old to be Madison's friend. Seeing my puzzled face, Madison said something I did not expect. This man is my father. The middle-aged man in front of me nodded with a smile. From what I heard, he was indeed her biological father. Madison's mother passed away shortly after giving birth to her. Her father, Howard, who had since become mentally and physically unwell and found it difficult to work or raise a child, had to put Madison in a foster home. After that, Howard had been admitted to a mental hospital and relied on his parents' home. He was eventually able to return to society. Although he hadn't seen Madison for many years out of guilt, he had apparently come to see her 2 years ago. At first, Madison couldn't accept her father, but recently, it seemed they were finally able to build a good relationship. At first, I was so angry at him for abandoning me. But then, working as a nurse and seeing people who are grieving after losing a partner or suffering from mental illness, I started to think that my father must have been struggling too. I still don't feel like we are a parent and a child, but I think it would be nice if we could understand each other better and gradually build a good relationship. She seemed to have intended to introduce him to me once my work situation calmed down. Howard, it turns out, is currently working as a journalist. I've heard about you from Madison. You've been looking out for her like a big brother since she was a little girl, haven't you? I am grateful for that. Just like Madison, that's why I want to help you this time. As I was taken aback, Madison threw me a lifeline. Jake, he also posts articles online. He knows some lawyers too. If you go and say you're quitting all by yourself, you might be sweet-talked into staying. I think it's okay to rely on Howard and other people. I bowed deeply to Howard, who had gentle eyes very much like Madison's. I want to quit that company and start over my life. Could you help me? Howard confidently replied, Leave it to me. Howard's actions from then on were swift. He brought in a lawyer he knew and negotiated with my company on my behalf, allowing me to easily quit my job. When they were informed that the company's treatment of me would be made into an article and published online, the CEO and chairman of the board seemed quite frightened. They must have been aware that they were doing something wrong. Thanks to the testimonies of other employees, the CEO admitted to his verbal abuse towards me. I received an official apology and severance pay, plus compensation for emotional distress that was more than double what I had expected. I was so afraid of quitting the company, but when I did, I felt surprisingly lighthearted. When I expressed my gratitude to Howard again later, he taught me something I didn't expect. Actually, Madison didn't ask me to help her childhood friend. She said, "I want you to help the person I love like me." Howard was driven to the edge, both mentally and physically, when he lost his wife. That's why he wanted to be of help to me, it seemed. Hearing this, I devoted myself to job hunting to respond to Madison's wishes. I confessed to Madison and started dating her as soon as I found a new part-time job. I love you, Madison, and I want to be with you as a partner from now on. I've been wondering when you were going to tell me. I've always loved you too, ever since we were children, and you were always there for me like a big brother. So we started dating. And now, 1 year later, I'm working and studying to become a child care worker via distance learning. I hope to work in a foster home, like the one where we grew up someday. We started living together last month. I plan to propose to Madison again when my dream of becoming a child care worker comes true. I'm still studying to become a child care worker, and Madison still has student loans left from her nursing school days. Life is not easy, and it is often difficult to balance part-time work and studying. But I feel very encouraged to be able to support each other with Madison, and I feel happy to be living with the person I love. From now on, I want to live my life cherishing the people who care for me. For 22 years, I managed the factory floor without experiencing any significant mishaps. Do you know what I got in return? A box made of cardboard for my belongings. I'm Kenny Harmon, a 59-year-old lead foreman at Tulsa, Oklahoma's Western Plains Manufacturing. We manufacture pressure equipment and industrial valves for oil refineries, precision work where errors may ultimately cost lives. Patricia from Human Resources called me into the conference room that Monday morning. With his hands clean and his shirt pressed, Leonard Wright, the new operations director who had only been with us for 4 months, sat there with a spreadsheet. Other than the required safety tour, Guy had never been on my floor. Patricia passed a packet across the table and stated, "Kenny, we're implementing some operational changes. The company is streamlining supervisory positions." Leonard gave a nod in agreement. Market pressures, competitive restructuring. I opened the folder. Package for severance. My replacement will be trained in 2 weeks. My pension would vest instantly in half. Monthly payments would cover the remaining half. At the top of the page, the company's logo appeared differently. Last year, they made a change without informing any of us on the floor. Patricia went on to say, "Your replacement starts tomorrow," as if to inform me that chicken was being served in the cafeteria. Jason Weber graduated from Oklahoma State with a degree in business. Very encouraging. I shut the folder and examined the tables with grain. No significant mishaps for 22 years. Under my supervision, 346 workers had returned home safely. I had taught every foreman and lead technician on that floor, established the maintenance schedules they adhered to, and constructed the safety procedures they currently employed day in and day out. "It was, I understand," I replied. Leonard appeared relieved. Patricia's eyes hardly met her smile. I took the long route home that evening, driving past the old refineries that once stood along the river. Prior to the company's moving south, my father had been employed there. I had built something at Western Plains, a system, a culture, a record, and now I had 2 weeks to give it to a child who wouldn't comprehend what he was tearing down. He had always told me, "Kenny, a man's value is in what he builds, not what he says." I called my old friend Frank, who had retired the previous year as soon as I arrived home. I informed him, "They're letting me go." "Bastards," he told him. You going to raise hell? No, I replied. However, they will soon realize, in 2 weeks some knowledge does not transfer. After hanging up, I turned to face my work boots near the door. Factory floor filth that never completely cleaned up after 22 years. What they were losing was unknown to them. I started at Western Plains when my son Ethan was just a year old. Jennifer and I had been married 4 years, and that job meant stability, health insurance, a future. 3 shifts a week at first, then supervisor after 3 years, assistant foreman after 7, and finally lead foreman after old Jack Thompson retired. The floor was my second home. I knew every machine by its sound. Could tell when the number 3 press was struggling before any warning light came on. I could spot a safety risk from across the room, smell when the hydraulic fluid needed changing, feel when the ambient temperature was off by 2 degrees. Jennifer used to say I cared more about that factory than our own house. Maybe she was right. After she left 10 years ago, taking Ethan with her to Colorado, I poured everything into the job. Holidays, weekends, storm days when half the crew couldn't make it in. The company changed hands twice during my time. First was Midwest Industrial Group in 2011. They kept most things the same. Then Axiom Partners bought us in 2020. Private equity guys with algorithms and efficiency metrics. They started trimming excess capacity immediately. I noticed the changes slowly. Maintenance budget cuts, cheaper part suppliers, longer intervals between machine servicing. They replaced 3 of my best mechanics with contract workers, reduced inventory of replacement parts, started pushing production quotas higher every quarter. 6 months ago, Leonard Wright arrived with his MBA and his spreadsheets. He called a floor meeting his first week. We're implementing new performance tracking across all departments, he announced. Data-driven decision-making is the future of manufacturing. After the meeting, my lead machinist, Diego, pulled me aside. Kenny, this guy's going to be trouble. He asked me if we could modify the safety lockout procedure to save time. I brushed it off, then told Diego we managed like we always had, but the warning signs kept appearing. Leonard stopped attending the monthly safety reviews. Emails about equipment maintenance went unanswered. My requests for training budget were denied 3 times. Then they hired 3 junior supervisors fresh out of college who started questioning procedures we'd refined over decades. Kenny, is it really necessary to run a full diagnostic after every shift change? One asked. Another. These daily inspections seem excessive. The manual only recommends weekly checks. I started keeping my own records, dating and photographing maintenance requests, documenting every conversation about safety concerns. Something told me I might need proof someday of what we've been doing right all these years. I just didn't expect to be shown the door so soon. The kid they brought in to replace me, Jason Weber, showed up in dress shoes and a tie his first day. 28 years old with gelled hair and a tablet he kept checking every 5 minutes. I'm really excited to learn from you before taking over, he said, offering a firm handshake like they teach in business school. I've already reviewed all the production metrics and identified several efficiency opportunities. I nodded and handed him a pair of steel-toed boots and safety glasses. Floor tour first, metrics later. For 2 weeks, I walked Jason through everything, showing the maintenance schedules, the safety protocols, the personnel files, introduced him to every shift supervisor and lead operator. But I noticed something as days passed. He was taking notes about processes, but missing the people. He didn't ask Diego about his son who just joined the Marines. Didn't remember that Alicia on the assembly line needed extra break time for her diabetes. Didn't understand that you had to sweet-talk the number 2 milling machine on cold mornings. On my last Thursday, I overheard him talking to Leonard in the break room. Once we implement the new shift schedule, we can probably consolidate 2 of the maintenance positions, Jason said. And that safety redundancy Kenny insists on for the hydraulic press, the manual doesn't require those extra checks. Leonard nodded, pleased. Exactly the fresh perspective we needed. They didn't see me standing there. I walked away quietly, something cold settling in my stomach. These weren't just changes to save money. They were dismantling safeguards I'd built over decades, protections that kept people from losing fingers, arms, or worse. That afternoon, I made a decision. I called an impromptu meeting with my most trusted people, Diego, Alicia, Sam from maintenance, and Russell, who ran night shift. We met in the parking lot after work. They're going to start cutting corners, I told them. And the new kid doesn't know what he doesn't know. What do you want us to do, Kenny? Diego asked. We can't just ignore the new boss. No, I agreed. But you can document everything, keep your own records, and if things start going sideways with the equipment. I handed each of them my personal phone number written on index cards. Call me. Not management. Me. I spent my final day clearing out my locker. Jason was already sitting at my desk rearranging things. I handed him my keys. Any last advice? He asked, barely looking up from his tablet. Yeah, I said. Listen to the floor. The machines talk to you if you pay attention. He smiled politely, clearly not understanding. I walked out without ceremony. No party, no cake, no speech. 22 years ended with a handshake from Patricia in Human Resources and a parking lot exit badge that deactivated as soon as I drove away. But I wasn't done with Western Plains. Not really. I was just waiting. 3 weeks after I left, Diego called me. They're changing the maintenance schedule on the hydraulic presses, he said, voice low like he was hiding in the supply closet, pushing it from weekly to bi-weekly inspections. Document it, I said. Note any pressure changes, any leaks, any unusual sounds. 2 days later, Sam from maintenance called. They denied my parts order for the backup generator. Said we can wait until the quarterly inventory. I kept a log of every call, every change, every corner cut. At 4 weeks, I decided to reach out formally. I wrote an email to Leonard and Patricia, professional and to the point. I've heard some concerning reports about changes to safety and maintenance protocols. Having overseen these systems for over 2 decades, I'd be happy to consult regarding the potential risks these modifications might introduce. Patricia replied within the hour. Thank you for your concern, Kenny. The transition has been smooth, and Jason has implemented several efficiency improvements already. We'll certainly reach out if we need your insight. Corporate speak for stay away. At 6 weeks, the first accident happened. Minor, a belt slipped on the number 3 press, causing a 2-hour shutdown. No one hurt. Then a small hydraulic leak in week 7. Then 3 separate electrical issues in week 8. Russell called me after each incident. The new guy's blaming the equipment. Kenny says it's all outdated and poorly maintained. My blood boiled. That equipment had run flawlessly under proper care. By week 10, I couldn't stand it anymore. I drove to the plant during lunch break and waited in the parking lot. When Diego came out, I waved him over to my truck. How bad is it really? I asked. Diego looked around before answering. Bad. Production's down 15%. They fired Sam last week. Said he was resistant to change. And Jason's got his college buddy running maintenance now. Guy couldn't tell a torque wrench from a screwdriver. Anyone been hurt? That was my biggest fear. Not yet. But Russell almost lost a hand when a safety switch failed on the cutting line. Jason wrote it up as operator error. I made a decision then. I knew people at the State Industrial Safety Board. One call could trigger an inspection. The next morning I made that call. I explained my concerns, my history with the plant, the specific changes that worried me. The inspector, a woman named Helen Barnes, took detailed notes. We'll conduct an unannounced inspection within the next 2 weeks, she assured me. I felt satisfied. The system would correct itself. 3 days later, Diego called again, panic in his voice. They know, Kenny. Someone told management you were behind the inspection request. Leonard's going nuclear.
My stomach dropped. That's happening.
They've got us working overtime, cleaning everything up, falsifying maintenance logs. The production lines are shut down so they can fix all the problems before the inspection. Then came the legal letter, hand-delivered to my house by courier. Western Plains Manufacturing was accusing me of malicious interference with business operations and violation of non-disclosure agreements. They threatened a lawsuit if I continued spreading false information about company practices. I called my lawyer, Bill Henderson. He reviewed the letter. They're bluffing about the NDA violations. You haven't shared any proprietary information, but they could make your life difficult with legal fees alone. Can they stop the inspection? I asked. No. Once the safety board decides to inspect, it happens. But can he be careful? These corporate types play dirty when cornered. I hung up, anger mixing with anxiety. They were trying to intimidate me into silence while hurriedly fixing the very problems I'd highlighted. But what would happen after the inspection passed? They'd go right back to cutting corners, only more carefully next time. I needed more than one inspection. I needed evidence of systemic negligence. The inspection came and went. Western Plains passed, barely. Helen Barnes called me afterward. They fixed the immediate safety issue, she said. But I noted several concerns in my report. Their maintenance documentation was inconsistent. Several employees seemed rehearsed in their responses. Will there be penalties? I asked. Minor ones. Not enough to change behavior long term. I thanked her and hung up, frustrated but not surprised. Companies like Western Plains knew how to navigate these situations, fix the visible problems, pay the small fines, return to business as usual. That weekend my doorbell rang. It was Russell, looking nervous on my front porch. Sorry to bother you at home, Kenny. I needed to show you something away from the plant. He handed me a thumb drive. What's this? I asked. Maintenance logs. The real ones and the ones they created for the inspection. Plus emails between Leonard and corporate about the cost savings initiative. They've been planning these cuts for a year before you even let go. They needed someone who wouldn't push back like you did. I invited Russell in, and we spent hours going through the files. The picture that emerged was worse than I'd imagined. This wasn't just about replacing an expensive veteran with a cheaper junior manager. Western Plains was implementing a company-wide strategy of deliberate underinvestment in safety and maintenance, offsetting the increased risk of accidents against projected quarterly savings. One email from an Axiom Partners executive was particularly chilling. Insurance covers accidents. Missed earnings targets cost us investors. They were gambling with people's lives. My people. The ones I protected for 22 years. There's more, Russell said, pointing to another folder. Jason knows the equipment is failing. Look at these maintenance requests he's denied. The list was staggering. Critical safety components, backup systems, preventive replacements, all declined with the same note. Defer to next quarter per budget constraints. Why are you showing me this, Russell? I asked. This could cost you your job. Russell's expression hardened. Alicia's nephew got hurt yesterday. Press guard failed. The one Jason said wasn't critical to replace. Kid's 19. Lost 2 fingers. They're calling it operator error, making him sign papers while he was still on pain meds. My hands clenched involuntarily. They can't do that. They're doing it, Russell said, and it's only a matter of time before something worse happens. After Russell left, I sat in my kitchen for hours, the evidence spread across my table. I was torn between fury and responsibility. These weren't just statistics on a spreadsheet. These were lives. People I'd worked alongside for decades. Families I knew. I picked up my phone, called the safety board again, then stopped. Another inspection wouldn't be enough. Western Plains would clean up temporarily, pay another fine, continue the cycle.
No, this required a different approach.
I called Diego, then Alicia, then 6 other trusted veterans from the floor. We arranged to meet at Frank's house the next day, neutral territory. When everyone arrived, I laid out what I'd learned, showed them the evidence Russell had provided.
So, what do we do? Diego asked when I finished. Go to the media? I shook my head. Not yet. First, we need leverage. What kind of leverage? Alicia asked.
The kind that hits their bottom line, I said. I'm going to need records of every shortcut, every failure, every near miss since I left. Documented, dated, photographed if possible.
They'll fire anyone they catch collecting that information, Frank pointed out. I know, I said. That's why we need to be smart about this and patient. I looked around at these people, skilled workers who deserve better than being treated as disposable parts in a corporate machine. Give me 2 weeks, I said. And whatever you do, keep your eyes open and stay safe. For the next 2 weeks, I became a ghost at Western Plains. I never set foot on the property, but my presence was felt. Diego and the others fed me information daily, shift reports, equipment failures, safety incidents. I compiled everything meticulously, building a case that couldn't be dismissed. Meanwhile, I made 3 key moves. First, I reached out to George Lawson, a former client who now worked for Western Plains' biggest customer, Meridian Energy Solutions. We met for coffee at a diner 20 minutes from the plant. Kenny, good to see you, George said, shaking my hand. Been wondering where you disappeared to. Forced retirement, I said, but that's not why I asked to meet. I showed him photos of defective pressure valves that had shipped from Western Plains in the past month, valves that would be installed in Meridian systems. These pass inspection? George asked, frowning. The new inspection process? Yes. The corner cutting has consequences, George. I couldn't live with myself if something failed at one of your facilities. George studied the photos carefully. This is serious, Kenny. We've got 30-year relationships with our suppliers, but safety comes first. All I'm asking is that Meridian conducts its own quality audit. See for yourself. My second move was contacting Helen Barnes again at the safety board. This time, instead of general concerns, I provided specific documented violations, complete with dates, times, and photographic evidence. This is much more substantial than before, Helen said. I'll need to bring my supervisor in on this. I understand, I told her. Just please keep my name out of it for now. The third move was the riskiest. I reached out to Jason Weber directly, asked him to meet me for lunch away from the plant. To my surprise, he agreed. He looked tired when he showed up at the restaurant. Dark circles under his eyes, his collar slightly askew. I appreciate you meeting me, I said after we ordered. How's the floor running? Jason ran a hand through his hair. Honestly, it's a mess. Equipment failing left and right. Corporates breathing down my neck about production targets. But I can't make quarter with half the line breaking down every other day. They didn't tell you what you were walking into, did they? They said the operation needed modernizing, that you were resistant to change, but every time I try to fix something, 3 more problems pop up. I nodded. That's because they dismantled a system that worked. Those maintenance schedules you scrapped, they weren't excessive. They were necessary. Leonard says the budget can't support that level of maintenance. And how's the budget looking with production down and quality issues rising? Jason's silence was answer enough. Listen, I said I didn't ask you here to gloat. I asked because in about 2 weeks, several things are going to happen. Meridian Energy is going to demand a quality audit. The safety board is going to conduct another surprise inspection, and the evidence of systematic safety violations is going to land on several desks, including corporate headquarters. Jason paled. Are you threatening me? No, I'm giving you a choice. You can be the fall guy when this all comes crashing down, the inexperienced manager who couldn't handle the job, or you can get ahead of it. How?
By documenting everything Leonard and corporate have pushed on you, every maintenance request you submitted that was denied, every safety concern that was dismissed.
Jason stared at his untouched food. They'll fire me.
Maybe. But you'd be doing the right thing and you wouldn't have a preventable death on your conscience.
I left Jason with my card. Think about it. You've got 1 week. 3 days later, he texted me. I'm in. What do you need from me?
The pieces were falling into place. Now we just needed one final push, a situation that would force Western Plains to face the consequences of their choices. As if on cue, the #1 hydraulic press, the heart of the production line, catastrophically failed the next day. No injuries, thankfully, but production ground to a halt. The crisis point had arrived. My phone rang at 6:15 a.m. It was Leonard Wright himself. "Kenny," he said, strain evident in his voice, "we have a situation at the plant." "So I've heard," I replied calmly. The shutdown had been all over the plant group chat by midnight. "Look, I'll be direct. We need your expertise. The main press is down, production's halted, and we have orders backing up. Our maintenance team can't identify the problem." "That's because you fired Sam, who maintained that press for 15 years, I pointed out. Leonard's sigh was heavy. "Can we set aside the past for now? The company is willing to bring you in as a consultant to get us operational again."
I'm listening.
$300 per hour cash. No questions asked about how you fix it. We just need it running by end of week.
I almost laughed. They thought this was about money.
"I'll be there in an hour," I said. "But I have conditions. 1, I bring my own team, Diego, Russell, and Alicia. 2, I have complete authority over repair decisions and parts orders. 3, I want access to all maintenance records for the past 6 months. Leonard hesitated then. "Fine. Whatever it takes." When I walked into the plant an hour later, the floor was in chaos. Operators standing idle. Managers huddled in corners, whispering urgently. The massive hydraulic press sitting silent and dark. Jason approached me immediately. "Thank God you're here. It's worse than I thought."
I nodded. "Let's see it."
As I inspected the press, everything became clear. Multiple system failures caused by months of neglected maintenance, exactly what I'd warned about. I turned to Leonard, who was hovering nearby. "I can fix this, but first I need to show you something."
I pulled out my phone and opened my email.
"I just sent this report to Axiom Partners Executive Team, the State Safety Board, and Meridian Energy Solutions. It details every safety violation, every corner cut, and every risk created by the policies you've implemented."
Leonard's face drained of color. "You can't do that." "I already have," I said. "Now, do you want this press fixed or not?"
3 days. That's how long it took to fix the hydraulic press, a repair that would have been a simple maintenance issue if they'd followed my original schedules. During those 3 days, Western Plains experienced a whirlwind of consequences. Meridian Energy suspended their orders pending a full quality review. The safety board arrived for another inspection, this one much more thorough than the last, and Axiom Partners sent their own operations team to assess the situation. By day 3, Leonard was gone, reassigned to corporate headquarters. Jason remained, but in a reduced role, reporting to a new operations director who'd been dispatched from the parent company. That new director, Thomas Whitfield, called me into the office after we got the press running again. "Impressive work," he said. "The corporate team has reviewed your documentation. Very thorough."
I waited, saying nothing.
"We're implementing a complete overhaul of maintenance and safety protocols at all our facilities," Thomas continued. "And we'd like to offer you a position, Director of Manufacturing Operations for Western Plains."
I considered the offer. "At what salary?"
Thomas named a figure 30% higher than I'd been making before, and complete autonomy over maintenance schedules and safety procedures within budget constraints.
Yes. I shook my head. That's the problem. Safety can't be budgeted quarter by quarter. I stood to leave, then paused.
I'll consult. 3 days a week. My hourly rate. I'll help you rebuild the systems I created, train your people properly, and get production back to where it should be. But I won't be an employee again.
Thomas considered this, then nodded. Acceptable.
I didn't go back for the title or the money. I went back for Diego and Alicia and Russell and all the others who deserved to work in a safe environment. I went back to rebuild what I'd spent 22 years creating. When I walked onto the floor the next Monday, the machines were already humming more smoothly. They knew their old caretaker had returned.